Okay, so all of these limiting factors work together to create something called ecological zonation. So this is sort of related to ecological succession, though where succession is how ecosystems change over time, ecological zonation is how species composition, the organisms that you find in an area, how species composition changes through space. So this is spatial versus temporal. So this is affected by limiting factors, right? So those factors like temperature, like sunlight, like water, like soil types, those will change throughout space. And so the zonation, the abundance of organisms will change in relation to those factors. You can see this in a lot of different ways, right? We could see this going further or nearer to a river as the soils change in their moisture. One of the most common examples is actually looking at a mountain. So we can see this really well in Arizona, and this is actually where it was first described. So if you go all the way down to Phoenix, you might notice that it looks very different down there. There's lots of cacti, and it's generally a lot hotter. It actually was over 110 degrees for 50 days straight this summer, which was a record. So we have really nice deserts down there. Technically the Sonoran Desert. There's technically 4 different deserts in America, in North America at least. The Sonoran Desert. And then as you drive up 17 from Phoenix, you might notice there's a point when we lose all the saguaro cactus. That's actually the part where it gets high enough elevation that it actually freezes, and saguaro can no longer survive. So that area is called the PJ woodland. Again, that's the pinyon juniper woodland, like in Sedona. So as we go up in elevation, it's a little bit cooler, tends to be a little bit more moisture as well. So then we get the pinyon juniper. And if we continue driving up from Sedona, we'll get to Flagstaff. And when you hit the top of 17 there, all of a sudden you're in this huge forest with big ponderosa pine trees, the ponderosa forest. And so again, the temperature has gotten a little bit cooler as we continue to go up in elevation. And also Flagstaff gets generally more precipitation than Sedona, and especially Phoenix. So as you continue driving up, maybe you want to go to the Snow Bowl. You're starting to climb Mount Humphreys, which is the tallest mountain in Arizona. And as you get to the Snow Bowl, you might notice that there's fewer ponderosa pine trees, but there's other Christmas tree looking type things, mostly fir and spruce and other things. This is the boreal forest. So perhaps you recall from our biome presentations that the boreal forest usually exists way up in the north in Canada, Russia, Siberia, Alaska. However, if we climb Mount Humphreys, we will get to the same exact forest as we find there. As we go north or south towards the poles, it tends to get colder. The same thing as we climb this mountain, it gets colder, and we start to see an ecosystem that we couldn't see unless we drove to Canada. And if you keep climbing Humphreys, eventually you get to a point where there's no more trees. We cross tree line. So once we cross tree line, we are technically in the alpine tundra. Perhaps you recall that most tundra is found either at the North Pole or in Antarctica. However, this is an alpine tundra, alpine referring to mountains. So since we climbed up that mountain, it was effectively the same thing as driving all the way up to the Arctic Circle in Alaska. So in just a few hundred miles, we've gone from a desert ecosystem all the way through temperate forests to boreal forests and into a tundra. So thousands of miles of different ecosystems we can see just on one mountain here in Arizona. And there's a perfect example of ecological zonation. Each of those species living in an area that is best suited for them based on those different limiting factors.